Hello, welcome everybody to this week's 0 to 1. We're on episode 8 now. Is that right? Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
that's
Episode
correct.
8. Yeah, so it's been 8 weeks now that we've been doing this. We're really, really glad that we've been able to deliver different types of content for different individuals. We know sometimes people who join us might be entrepreneurs and they're looking at how they grow things. There might be others who are freelancers and they're trying to find other new opportunities or what other good solutions are there to help speed up their day. So we always really love seeing how we can help anybody who we would define as an independent doer. And as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the event that we're going to do today is touching on the topic from employee to entrepreneur, which we know that there are, those of us who are members have joined before who maybe haven't taken that step into being an entrepreneur. And if you'll have either joined us on previous calls or now you can actually watch back all the calls on our YouTube channel, and we'll put a link for that in the chat a little bit later on, so you can come back and check those out. But you'll see that there's others experience who've gone through different parts of their journey as well, and they've also been maybe in a corporate environment and now they're a solopreneur, or maybe they're now freelancing and they were attached to a business. The focus today is a little bit on how you can go, those really early initial steps from an from an employee working at companies of any size to making that leap into starting a business and the things that we want to touch on. And so Yassus and I will do different bits of both. We want it to be interactive. So as ever, if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom or in the chat. If you want to add your question verbally, then just raise your hand with the button at the bottom that says raise hand, and then we'll unmute you as well, and feel free to ask your question there as well. So we want to make it as interactive as possible. So any feedback is welcome. And also what we really would love is your own experiences, because everybody's is a bit different. I think probably the small print I should add here is that we're just trying to give you some starter points here, and we recognize that everyone's journey is a bit different, and also that you're going to experience things at different parts at different times, or some industries will be a lot harder or more saturated than others, starting out in a brand new industry. So all of those things, there's a bit of an asterisk there, but we want to still try and see if we can share some useful tips with you. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we'll get into it. Cool. All right, okay. So you'll see just on the side here, we don't have many slides today. We're going to touch on a few kind of core parts to what we say from going from an employee to an entrepreneur. And we're going to kick off actually with a little bit of an introduction from Yassas, who has lived that journey himself. He's mentioned this a little bit on another call in the past, but he's going to talk a little bit around that. And then we're going to get into some of those tips and guide points, which again, very much open to your feedback and everything as well. So I shall share or full screen, and then we'll get into the slides. So yes, off you go.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Hi, everyone. So we can get started with the next slide, Jamie, and would like to give a quick intro about myself. Obviously, I'm currently with Dual Circle as its Chief Operating Officer. I lead partnerships and operations at Dual Circle, and just on the shift between entrepreneur and employee, I've had that I guess twice or a couple of times at least. I started obviously my career as a employee in a corporate, and I last worked before shifting to be an entrepreneur at Accenture in Australia. And at the time, I was involved in testing as a system, and I was also involved in training the users on that system. So I fell a bit in love with the training side of things, and a bit of capacity building in that sense, because we were upgrading our users to use a new system. So this led me to think of a training education related business, which I started, co-founded with a friend of mine. So I kind of shifted from an employee to an entrepreneur, and we did that business for 5.5 years, and we exited the business. The business was absorbed by a larger educational company, and then there was about a year and a half in between me joining another corporate. So in that 1.5 years time, I was a solo consultant, as we would call now a freelance consultant or even a fractional expert. So I had about 3 clients in that 18-month period. And then I also then shifted again to a corporate, Meta, Facebook. I didn't intend to join a company again. I thought I would be a consultant and maybe start another business. But then Meta kind of headhunted me at the time. I was doing some work in South Asia, and they saw me and some of the connections I had. So they were looking for someone in that region, and I got kind of hired. And I ended up being with Meta Facebook for 5 years. And then I joined Doer Circle, and Doer Circle is all about supporting entrepreneurs. And by the way, at Meta also, I was mostly empowering entrepreneurs, especially female women entrepreneurs. So I have a career dealing with entrepreneurs, supporting founders, but then myself as a professional, I've been shifting between the two sides. So I guess that's a bit of my story. And I guess the things that I would share today are the learnings that I have from that in a way. And obviously, Jamie will also chip in from his experience, the vast experience that he's had in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in the UK and around the world as well. But I also would say that I'm not an expert, or I would say even Jamie is not an expert on things that we share, but these are the learnings that we've had in our journeys. But we would share what we've learned, and would also expect you to share some of your learnings, so we kind of learn as a community and grow as a community together. The first thing that I wanted to share when I kind of think about my shift from an employee to entrepreneur is the shift in your identity, and the way that you think about what you do. As an employee, you have a set job, you have a manager, you have a you have KPIs to achieve, projects to kind of deliver. Things are quite clear. But as you move into entrepreneurship space, it's not that clear. There are no clear boundaries, and being able to grapple with that kind of lack of clarity is the first thing that someone needs to kind of adjust to. It took some time for me as well to kind of be my own boss, because I was also used to having that guidance behind me, or sometimes in front of you, someone leads and then you kind of follow them. But here now you don't have anyone to follow, others would follow you. So that identity shift as well as the mindset shift is the first thing that kind of needs to be developed, I guess. And it also comes with dealing with ambiguity to some extent at companies, or when you are working for an employer, things are much clearer. Or even if it's unclear at a higher level, as an employee, you have your domain clear. Whereas as an employee, as an entrepreneur, you don't have the same clarity, and how to still have your day, still deliver what you have to do as an entrepreneur, but while managing that ambiguity. You might be developing an alliance with a partner that's critical for your business, and the partner is still not signing, but at the same time, you are still managing an employee or managing a client. How do you still keep your head straight and don't show the panic that you have in your mind, but still be able to run smoothly with day-to-day stuff that you have to do while managing a big crisis on the side with a partner, maybe as an example. So that running with ambiguity is something that is important, and I think it's in a way a skill that will come over time, but it is also a mindset shift, accepting that this is going to happen. It is not going to be calm all the time as it was as an employee, but accepting that things can be a bit bumpy along the way as an entrepreneur. And also rejection and resilience. I guess resilience we've kind of touched. rejection is something that a startup entrepreneur would have all the time, especially on the go-to-market side with partners, but also with clients. If you are kind of selling to few big clients, certain clients would, not only just certain, but a lot of clients would reject you initially because they don't know your product, they don't know you, they don't know the quality of your service. So they may reject, and getting used to that rejection is also a strength in your kind of mind, and the body itself to develop, I guess. Because as an employee, you don't have so much rejection unless you've been exposed to sales, and at sales you face rejection. But someone like me, I was training people internally, and I didn't have so much rejection built in my body, right? I wasn't used to it. But now as an entrepreneur, I had to present these new services to clients, to partners, and I would say 80% of them would be rejecting you in the early stages until they kind of start to see what you are talking about. And living with that rejection, but still trying to convert those rejections into acceptance is also something that's important in that sense, in that stage. Most of this, I would say, is about mindset. It's not only a skill. Yes, there's a bit of skills. For example, how to convert a rejection into a positive acceptance. There are skills involved in that, like how to kind of eliminate negativities and showcase positivities and convert a client or convert a partner. Yes, there are some skills involved in dealing with ambiguity. Yes, there may be certain skills involved in that. Doing a plan while you don't have a manager. Yes, there are skills involved in it. But at the same time, the most important thing, I guess, when you shift from an entrepreneur employee to entrepreneur, is the mindset readiness, and taking that first 6 months to prepare yourself to this new situation. Just one last slide before I hand over to Jamie. As you shift from an employee stage to an entrepreneur stage, it's also important to build some cushion, because the first few months, or first maybe even 18 months, 24 months of your entrepreneurial journey might not be financially that stable. And then that's very common in most businesses, even if you were consulting, freelancing, or you had a product or a service as a company going out there. And do you have that kind of cushion built for yourself or for your family, and having a plan so that you know that you can manage that period. And then some level of transferable skills is another thing that you could plan for. What have I learned in my corporate career that can be brought into my entrepreneurial journey? Obviously, from the first section that we spoke about, there's a fair bit of unlearning to do as well. Like, you had that guidance, you had that KPIs given, so that there's a bit of unlearning to do and learn certain things. But there are also certain learnings that can also come along with you. For example, project management, program management were part of my skill set as an employee in early stage in my career. And then as an entrepreneur, you also need those, because you need to manage your business in a organized way. And then your staff also starts to see that things happen in a structured manner. There's a project or program plan, and then you're trying to achieve certain things in a certain time, in a certain budget. So some of those skills you may have had would also transfer into the new environment as well. The last thing before I hand over to Jamie is to build a structure soon. The first few months could be quite fluid and unclear, and we spoke about running with that ambiguity. But at the same time, the aim should be to build some level of structure pretty soon. It might not be 100% clear, but at least, when do you start work? At what time do you finish work? What projects need to get done in a certain week, or what are we achieving in the first 3 months, etc. How many clients are we looking at, and how much time can we spend on a certain client? The KPIs may change, but some level of structure has to come in, and it might not be there in the first 2-3 months, but by the 6th month, 8th month, 9th month, that level of structure slowly needs to trickle in. Otherwise, it will be always chaos. So you need to get out of that chaotic environment and move into an organized environment so that you kind of run as a more organized, objective-driven entrepreneur.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Jess. That's the start. And then I'll do a couple, and then Jess has got a little bit more to share with you as well. So we're alternating it a little bit more today, which is nice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about business development because that's the kind of space I operate in. And I think Yass's point on the first slide around being able to deal with rejection, something that if you work in sales in any capacity, you have to deal with a lot of rejection. But even still, like I know individuals that have worked for, like, say, if you work for Salesforce, for example, probably one of the biggest companies and technology companies in the world, and they're so well known that selling that product to people can feel easier because people know who they are and what they do and relatively how much it costs and things like that. Whereas if you're now suddenly an entrepreneur and you're in a different industry, different product, then that can be hard. So that, everyone is going to face that rejection, and I think it's good for character building as well. So that was just something I thought about from what Yessa said as well. So what we can talk a little bit about is ecosystem and go to market, and I'm only just going to touch on it briefly because we've actually got a few things on the horizon that we'll go into even more detail on. So really just kind of almost want to get this as a starting point, as a conversation starter, and get people's feedback on this as well. And the first thing, I guess, is so we see figure out where you can play. So the key thing is, I know I've spoke to a lot of founders or entrepreneurs to be, and they've got some really great ideas, great products, solutions. Many of them are also very selfless in terms of like they really want to help people or make something better of an industry or something like that. But the key thing is you as much as you want to dream big, you need to start out first in a place where you can actually, a market you can tackle. So, and that you can focus on as well. So really look at the industries, specifically, which ones are going to maybe have a lot more like a longer term runway to them, which ones are going to be slow birds in terms of industries. Look for partners. Partnering is a big thing. We're going to touch a little bit more on that in next week's session as well. Find out who your competitors are so that you can see how they are performing, what kinds of clients they get. Some resources out there will give you competitive reviews, so do use that information to see where can you differentiate yourself as well. And then which entry points as well. Is it the case that you're going to go purely like direct sales, or are you going to go through partners or through marketplaces and things like that? So there's different ways that you can launch, but really you want a clear idea of how you want to do that. And then the second point is about MVP. You probably heard this phrase, MVP, minimum viable product. So basically the most simplest form of your product or your service that you can get out there in front of people. And the sooner you do this, the better, because you're going to get more learnings in market with potential customers, friends and family, things like that, than you will if you just kind of go through a lot of research and your own levels of iteration. Like, it's better to test in the field where possible. Of course, you don't want to test something that's full of bugs or something like that, and that could create a negative experience. But you do want to get that data, that learning, and ideally also you can start to build a little bit of commercials around that as well. So I would say definitely test your minimum viable product with a small audience, gather the feedback before you go into like a more of a full entry. And you'll find also that friends and family are quite willing to support with that as well. Hopefully, I mean, it might not be the case that your service or your product is their kind of product, they might not be the audience for you, but nevertheless, you can still use them as a sounding board. So I would definitely recommend that from a go-to-market point of view. And then some of the key things here, which people will know about to some extent or have heard certain phrases on it, but know what your business value is. It's a little bit like your why. Why do you exist? What are you there to do? How are you different from other people? If you understand this and you can communicate this very clearly and quickly to investors, partners, customers, platforms, and so on, then you'll jump a lot more steps forward as well. So if you understand what is the business's mission, what is its vision, how are you going to make your mark in that industry? How are you different? How are you disrupting something? what's your value proposition? So your 1 or 2 minute summary of the business. The faster you can describe that that value and where that is, that's going to help you both with in terms of raising investment, but also finding clients, finding partners, and so on. And then also, what's your brand story? And I put in brackets here, like think of it a little bit like the front cover of a book. You know, if somebody was to just quickly scan it, what is the story behind the business as well? Like what's, again, coming back to that why and the existence. Those things are helpful because it also gives you guidance, even while, you know, I mentioned in number one that the market can be huge. So you could be there to tackle a really, really powerful or very far-reaching solution, but you still need to understand what the milestones will look like. What is the vision in that sense? You know, it might be we really want to make a mark in Singapore, and that's our goal. And then the plan is that once we've made our mark in Singapore, then we move into Southeast Asia, for example, once we've proven the case. So that way you can build steadily, less chance of burnout and things like that happening. And then the second bit I'm going to mention before we jump back to us as well is like getting yourself out there. So this kind of equates to networking, branding, the marketing side of it. You know, the bits that I think last week's session we talked a little bit how as a business or an individual you can use some AI to help you with your marketing as well. And this is a little bit more a higher level to say really, you know, find your tribe, right? And we're really big on this as well because we know independent doers are our tribe, right? Freelancers, entrepreneurs, small business owners, those are our tribe. Those are the people that we're there to support. But for you, when you're launching a new service or product, which channels can you find them in? Which platforms as well? And pick a couple of them so that you can be there, so you're present, you can offer value and proactively offer value as much as you can. And the second point there is like what kinds of content would help them solve their challenges as well, because the other thing, like Yas has mentioned, is that you know you're potentially launching a brand new business, a brand new service. You might be creating something that no one's seen before, or something drastically different to what they've seen before. And so you need to be able to help educate them along the way, because not everybody is going to be willing to buy immediately. And so if you can be present in the channels, sharing value, sharing useful content with them, then that's going to help you build your reputation as somebody, your personal brand, but also your business's credentials as well. And that's, I suppose, segues nicely into the second point, which is initially, you know, as the founder, as the entrepreneur of the business, your personal brand is going to be more important at that moment, because people will buy, or they will test your product, or they'll engage with you, potentially invest in you based on you as an individual, because at that moment your business is still unknown or less known. And so the key thing there is really got to work on that. And I know it can be tough, because I know a lot, I speak to other entrepreneurs who may be introverted, or they don't really feel like they're very sort of salesy or anything like that. Or they just don't want to tap into some of those networks. Like they don't want to be posting every single day on LinkedIn and things like that. But the key thing is, as you're building, if you're able to communicate in the right channels, and it might not be LinkedIn, it could be another channel. It could be in person instead. It could be at events, for example. Then the key thing there is that you build your people know you as the go-to person for the service, the industry that you're operating in. So it is still really important. I think we want to stress that you should be working on that. Personal branding doesn't have to be surface level things. It can just be like essentially, what's my reputation? What value can I offer? And then ultimately, as you build that as well, then your business branding also builds, and then you need to make sure that you can be found well. So I haven't got it as a bullet point here, and we've touched on it in one of the other previous weekly sessions, but it's like making sure you can be found online. So making sure that your website, or you have a portfolio which is optimized for that, so that you can be searched and found when people look for the keywords that they're looking for. And I guess in a sense, if you do number one first on this list, if you find your tribe, you find the kind of content they want, you find the platforms and channels that they operate in, then you can use all of that great information to make sure that you're found as a business from a branding point of view. Which keywords are the things that jump out? What are the frequent challenges they raise? Should I be putting some of this content on my site as a blog, or a piece of like a white paper or something like that, as a guide, as a way to generate opportunities for you? So they do really all connect together. And then lastly, as I mentioned, tap into the network. So friends, family, friends of friends, go to people who are a little bit warmer in your network. It's going to help you. I know sometimes when I spoke to some founders, there's a fear that friends will maybe not give you the hard truth in that sense. They might dance around it. And I think that just depends a little bit on the individuals, and you can be clear with them. Look, I want you to be critical. I want to improve. That's how I'm going to be successful. And so really push them to give you transparent and honest feedback as well. And then this last point I put here, as well, as I was saying about how there was I've touched on this a little bit before, but it's a good book. I would recommend it, The $1 Million Weekend, which is saying, like, ask your friends or your family, would they invest $1 in your service, your product right now? Like right there and then, would they give you $1 or the equivalent in your currency? And then if they're willing to do that, then it's a sign that that you're at least on the right track in that sense, depending a little bit on what services that you're offering. So Tiasas?
Yep. So as you develop your product, either as an MVP or a early stage beta version, or the service that's ready to be offered to clients, then you will start thinking about setting up. What's the arrangement that I have, the vehicle that I have to take this product or the service to the market. So different people do this in different ways, and some people also do it in phased manner as well. So there are different ways to get a business out there. One way that we've seen is people start as a freelancer without technical registration, like an entity at the beginning. Start as a freelancer with your own personal account, bill from your personal name, and get money into personal account. That's one way of doing business. I'm just talking about how to formalize a structure now, right? So one way is to just start as a solopreneur or a freelancer without much of a formal setup. That's one way to do it. I've also seen people starting by partnering with someone else who has a registration, who has an entity, but you become like a consultant to them. Billing happens through the partner, but you provide the service. So these two methods would be like a phased approach where you don't register a company and go full on at the beginning, but you kind of have a softer launch in terms of your entity or the way you do business. So either freelancing or like partnering with someone who can help you do the billing part of it or invoicing part of it. But then at a certain stage, if you feel like, okay, I'm now ready to kind of shift from that phase, you are an employee, now you are like a freelancer or like a consultant of a company, but now the final stage of you actually becoming a formal founder or an owner of a company. That could be the point where you actually now shift and register a company. I would personally advise to do it in that phased approach, so you don't take a huge risk immediately. So you kind of do it in 2 stages instead of 1 stage immediately. And then there would be different ways to set up in different countries. And this is where you would need some support from an expert to advise you as to what the best way to set up a company in that country and to be compliant in that market as well. Because you want to make sure that your business is compliant legally as you run the business and as you scale the business in that market, as well as in a region or even globally, depending on the product. Obviously, there would be technical matters coming in, whether you are a local in that country, whether you are a foreigner in that country, do you need a local nominee director? Because I wouldn't go into details of that, but these would kick in as you decide what the structure is. And this is where you would need some advice and guidance from someone who knows the technicalities. And from our experience working with lots of founders in the region and in Singapore as well, is that there is a way if you want to do this. Even if someone was a foreigner, there's a way. Even if they were a local, obviously it's possible. But we haven't seen a situation where it's impossible. You could do it. You just need to figure out the way to do it. And this is something an expert could guide. But the more important thing is is phasing it out and making sure that you develop the right structure to suit the business that you want to do. I guess that's where the first phase of planning and kind of designing your go-to-market strategies, your partnerships, and all that will play a role in helping you decide what the structure I would need eventually to run this business properly. With that, I would also move to one more area that's about insight, right? When you run a business, it's very important that you have enough data points, enough insights to guide you. Now, in a company, there would be different teams, and as an employee, you would get these insights, these data points, so that your work, your team's work is guided from that. But as an entrepreneur, you don't have that. But entrepreneurship shouldn't be about guesswork. It should be about guided work, data-driven decisions running the business. So tracking is really important. There's this famous statement that you can't fix something that is not measurable. If you're not measuring something, you can't fix it. You have to measure to know if there's a problem. And you know there's a problem, then you can start fixing it. If you didn't measure it, you don't know the problem. So it's really important to track things. It could be about the leads side of things, your conversion side of things, your revenue side of things. Some of your operational stuff could be like how long do you take to do certain things. It could be about your tech development. How long do you take to fix bugs, for instance? What's the output of your developers? I mean, KPIs can be developed, but the important thing is to start tracking these things. So it would be different from one business to another, but that is entrepreneur's role to decide what's important in my business to track and start gathering those data so that you have a tracker, you have your dashboard, so that data-driven decisions can be taken. The second and one of the most important things in entrepreneurship, I guess, is developing that discipline. I mentioned this in my first segment also. It's quite chaotic and putting out fires in the beginning, but then you need to build that discipline, and maintaining that discipline and creating workflows for the team as well as for yourself is important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be smooth almost every day. And then your customers are also going to feel that. The customers would feel that this company, this service provider is not organized. You can't trust them because they're not internally organized. So you need to build that internal structure and the discipline so that your stakeholders also start to feel, okay, we can trust this partner, this company, this service provider, and we can go with them. And obviously, to do this, you also need to get the basics right. For example, having your accounting in order is a basic thing in running a business, because founders are not accountants, and you can't expect that you would do all your accounting and have your monthly accounts done and you have your reports to review. You would need a service provider or an accountant. A startup founder might not be able to afford an accountant initially, right? That's where you would have a service provider. So it's not that expensive from our experience, but having those basics in place, getting those reports and reviewing those reports and taking actions based on those reports is the important thing. And it's also, as per my fourth point, it's about actually taking action. You could develop lots of data points as well, but how do you move from those data points into insights and then actions? And actions are the most important thing. And I guess from my experience, it's about mindset. A lot of founders sometimes tell us like we don't have the systems to track everything. Like we don't have that SaaS system, this SaaS system that gives us data, that gives us insights. So how do we do it? I guess as you scale and as you grow, you could start implementing some of the existing platforms that could give you these data points and insights. But initially, I would say it's all about mindset. It could be having simple spreadsheets, simple dashboards for yourself so that you start tracking things the way you can afford. And as you scale and grow, you slowly bring in products that can help you. Some of it can be internally developed, But if you're not in a tech business, you might not. So you might actually bring products from outside. But the important thing, I guess, is to develop that mindset of tracking things and building a business that is data driven. Yeah, we can move forward.
Yeah. Sorry, I just was informed as well that apparently you're just seeing my camera at the moment on your side. So I assure you, Yassis is next to me, and actually in the recording you'll see his handsome features as well. So rest not, he is here. It's just yeah, unfortunately, I'm not throwing my voice. It is actually Yassis next to me talking. So yeah, I don't know. I might be able to spotlight him for the next one, but we'll see. We're almost at the end now, so we'll probably stop sharing at that point and then just open up the discussion. So we've just got a couple more bits to go. So the last thing I'll say on our side is like look after yourself. You know, I think we've mentioned this a couple of times in different ways, both to freelancers as well. I think it's a big part of what we love to remind founders, freelancers, anybody who's really going from a much more connected environment into maybe on their own for a period of time, is to really look after your well-being, set the right boundaries. And it's the same thing as an entrepreneur. I think it can be a little bit harder as an entrepreneur when I speak to some entrepreneurs and founders, because there's such a passion and excitement there, especially when you've come from maybe an environment where maybe you feel, you know, I was just one kind of cog in a big wheel at an organization. Now I'm building something myself. It's my baby. You know, I really want to make this work. And there's that feeling of urgency. But the key thing is to set the right boundaries, because it is intensive in the beginning. And you do need to make sure that you can sustain that and to prevent burnout. So make sure you set some boundaries on that, some healthy boundaries in terms of like how many hours you're going to spend on the business at a time. And that can be different for everybody. You know, you might find that you're very productive working in the evenings, whereas in the mornings less so. You know, everybody's a little bit different there. So, but the key thing is you don't want to be working like 20, 21 hours a day, every day, getting a few hours sleep, you know, and you will eventually get to a point where, you know, you just won't function so well, where then that lets the business down. You won't be able to deliver your best work. So do make sure you bear that in mind. Look for a support network. So of course, obviously Doers Circle is another big proponent of that. We have, you know, over 150,000 members globally that you can, you know, look to for support as well. Many of which are also entrepreneurs who, yes, they won't understand exactly every single one of your challenges because all of our journeys are unique, but they'll definitely understand some of the key challenges that you face in terms of, you know, maybe raising investment or finding a partner or getting that first sale in the door or launching your products and so on. And so really do look to find a group and like an accountability buddy to help you at the start initially, and that way also won't feel quite as lonely in that building phase. And then lastly, we're sort of prioritizing your mental and physical well-being. So making sure that you're balancing both. You know, some people maybe they could be really you know, there might be somebody who's very sort of physically fit, but they're working around the clock, and of course that can impact your mental well-being as well. You know, you just got to remember that the business's success is resting on your shoulders. You know, no pressure but pressure. So make sure that you've got good coverage as well. You know, make sure that your health is covered, because again, we've spoken to founders and entrepreneurs who've gone from an environment where HR would take care of all of that for them in the past, and now they're on their own. So, you know, if you stop, then the business can potentially stop operating initially as well. So you need to make sure that you've got you know, that peace of mind there so that you can do your best work, but also making sure mental health and part of that mental health will also come back to point one, which is setting the right boundaries. And so yeah, so you know, not to, you know, to plug us too much because you're here and you're part of the community already in that sense. But really, we just want to emphasize that we're here to help you start, build, and grow your businesses. That's what we exist to do. That's how we try to aim with resources and solutions and so on. And so, yeah, please do like look to us if we can help in any way, or if we can connect you with other people that you need as well. Like, you know, Yassis and I are very happy to do that wherever we can as well. But yeah, like this is a topic that's close to our heart for that very reason. So just a little preview of what's coming soon before we do jump off the slides, because then I'll stop sharing the screen. We've got a session next week on 0 to 1 featuring CEO and founder Steve Dawson of Asia Market Entry, and he's going to talk a little bit about partnering and how you can expand better into other markets as well. He's got some really great content there. I'm going to be doing a deeper dive session on business development, so ways that you can maximize your opportunities, and that's appropriate for freelancers, entrepreneurs, and business owners. And then we're also going to be starting a new series. So this will continue as usual. There's not changing. But we're also looking to add a little bit more in. So maybe some more mentorship that we can help with, be it things like business development, operations, marketing setup. We're working on the structure, probably be one-on-one, because I think that's likely what most people will be comfortable with. But if you want to consider it as a group one as well, let us know. We'll share some more information in the WhatsApp group, but we're very open to feedback. If somebody says, I'd love to do it, but only one-on-one, fair enough. We can look at how we do that. But if others are saying, I don't mind being part of a group, then of course we can help more people at the same time, then that's also great too. But that's it in terms of the slides. I want to allow a bit of time for questions and sort of spotlighting anybody else who's here with us as well. And also then you'll be able to see, yes, that's the space too. So thanks. That's all the slides. And let me stop sharing and see if we've got any questions. So we're both here. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully that was the slides were useful for you. Any questions, burning questions, anything that anyone would like us to clarify on those slides? If there was anything maybe we went too fast over or you need a bit more detail on, please do drop them in the Q&A. And while we are doing that as well, we're going to just have a little look across the attendees as well and see, is Neeraj with us now, or is he?
Yeah, I think he was there for a while and he's dropped off now.
Let's just have a look. Yeah, because there's one of our members was actually quite keen to share his own experience of a similar journey. Yeah, so we've got the Q&A. So okay, so we have a question here saying, what support does Duo Circle have for tech founders? So I suppose tech founders can be quite a broad term in that sense, in terms of like what kind of tech. We speak to founders who are maybe founders of Web3 businesses, so they're in the kind of maybe the blockchain or that kind of space. AI, obviously, another big one. And then there are others that are working on things like fintech or consulting across technology. And so I would say, yeah, how we can support them is to get themselves set up in terms of like, what do they need? And some of the bits that Yas has touched on, which are, even when you're set up, then you still need to make sure that you're running things, filing things, compliant in that sense. And then some of the partners that we work with will help you can be found as well. So how you can be found online, how you can stand out, especially in a tech space, which is, some sub verticals of tech have thousands of players in that regard. And so you need to be able to stand out in that sense. And then also maybe how you might be able to go to market as well. Like how can you build partners and be found that way as well? So those would be the ways I think that we would try and support. What we're also developing is more community initiatives. So there's resources there are in-person events, there are virtual events. So hopefully all of those types of things can help you.
And obviously mentoring that we are just developing as well. So if someone wants to talk to us, you can let us know, and then we will be happy to speak one-on-one as well.
Yeah, and hopefully the content that we were talking about today, it's industry agnostic in the sense that it doesn't apply to just one industry. So there are ways that everybody can benefit from that. But I'm also mindful that there may be some, very specific points or niche points, and feel free to, we can discuss that a bit more. Okay, another question here. Regarding market fit and positioning, how did you know it was time to stop validating and just launch? And yeah, that's a fair point, actually. I think even as I was sort of writing out some of this content as well, I was thinking to myself that there's a point where you need to do, and I suppose that's what I was trying to get across with the testing part, is that you can spend a lot of time over validating when really your market's going to help you to validate in that sense. So I think that's where I kind of said the minimum viable product. So minimum viable product could be it doesn't necessarily mean like you've got an application or you've got a login for a system or something like that. It might be just enough to have the concept, and you have to maybe initially very manually deliver that for individuals. And I think that's okay, because the point there is really what you're trying to do is work out, is this something which adds value? Is this something which is different to what's out there right now? Am I solving a problem for my customers, my potential customers? And those are the things. So yeah, I definitely don't spend too long on the validation phase. Yeah, and I also reference, the second plug of the day, maybe we need a little tally or something. But on that very book, that $1 Million Weekend book, that Noah Kagan, the author, is mentioning how you can feasibly do this over a weekend. I mean, it depends a bit on family commitments and other work commitments and so on. But the point there is that, the sooner you do it, the sooner you can also disqualify if it's not a good opportunity. If you find actually it might be something you're really passionate about as a project, and you love it and so on, but you might find it can't be developed into a sustainable business. And then that means then it could still be a hobby. It could be great to be a hobby, but is it going to be a viable business? And if it's not, you want to really kind of set that to the side and then look at something else, or how do you pivot, for example? How do you tweak that a little bit more? So yeah, hopefully that gave a little bit of an insight to that.
Jamie, I can also add a bit
Yeah.
in the area of consulting, which is more like a service. This would be a little more organic, I guess, because you're not necessarily developing a product and validating a product in that sense, but you have a concept rather than an actual technical product. In that kind of an area, I would rather do a bit of validating in terms of your secondary research and your primary research. Primary research would mean that you talk to your potential clients, even family or friends who might understand this, but especially potential leads, potential clients, just to see how it would kind of land with them. And if there's a kind of potential client who's close enough, I guess it's the time to kind of define the product in a way that it can be presented more broadly on your website, on your social media channels, so that you can go to a broader clientele next and see if it clicks well. I guess in the services, it's difficult to finalize a product, have clients, stop validation, and then go into a doing business mode. It would be always develop, see how it goes. Maybe take a client there, take a client here, and develop further, change the product, try new clients, that kind of thing. So it will be more as you go, and as you go, the product also changes. And in services, you will also find that the product changes all the time, and you also have to adjust what you offer, and your skills might have to change accordingly, and you might need to partner with another consultant to make sure that you have additional skills that you didn't bring to the table as well. So over time, by yourself or with a set of consultants or freelancers, you can support different types of clients in that area. It's more like I would say a product area rather than a product per se.
Yeah, and I think actually the other thing I thought about is your former, well, I guess kind of your former boss, I guess, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Meta as well, and Facebook, is, he said move fast and break things as well. And I think that's it. It's like some of the biggest businesses out there succeeded because they did rather than think, in that sense. And of course, that doesn't mean, excuse me, that doesn't mean go headfirst into a wall, but you've got to be brave and start sooner, and then develop from there. Sorry, I've got a bit of a tickly throat. Just going to mute a second. There we go. Sorry. So okay, we have another question in the chat as well. Sorry, I'm hanging in there, don't worry. It says, could you build a student portal for us to connect and reach out to mentors who can help and guide us build our own business? That's interesting, actually. So, for us as a business, the majority of our members, I mentioned there's 150,000, the majority of our members are between 25 to 45 years old. But we're very mindful of the fact that there's a lot of students, young entrepreneurs that are maybe they're at university, they're at school, wherever it might be, and they've got these really great ideas and they've got that entrepreneurial spirit, and we want to encourage that if we can as well. We don't really want, like, of course, if they decide that they want to go into a more traditional or corporate environment for their own reasons, that's absolutely fine. But if they're doing that because they don't have help and support to build that entrepreneurial side of things, then that's where we want to help them as well. So there is a bit of that behind the scenes we're working on. We have been developing that a little bit. I think we'll probably have more information on that a little later this year, but we have more recently been in touch with a couple of universities in Singapore, for example, to see how we can support that young entrepreneurship as well. And I think that there is a keenness from universities to have other options for their students. It shouldn't just be one path is straight into work, for example. Especially now with the creator economy representing something like $25 billion a year, and all the other the tech innovations that we're seeing as well. So yeah, it's something that we are working on, but it's not something that we have right now. And then I see, sorry, we have another question as well. It's anonymous to me. How would you take care of your team's well-being or keep them motivated when you're still figuring things out yourself? Yeah, again, a fair question. How would I answer this? Maybe yes, you think about something as well, but I would say you have to think about a little bit like how you also want to be treated in that regard. So if you're taking care of your well-being, like it's going to be a reflection on your team as well. So if your team are witnessing you kind of burning yourself out, working around the clock, sending emails at 3 a.m. to the team and stuff like that, then that's going to reflect in maybe creating a culture at the business which is not sustainable. I think that's the key. I appreciate that there is an urgency, and as I said, there's a passion and so on, but it's about being mindful that every individual as part of the team have different motivations, different strengths. They all have different opinions and cultural perceptions of different things as well. And so you want to make sure that your businesses, if possible, can represent that, because that way you're going to be more successful, because you will have diversity of thought, of fresh ideas, rather than it all being like everyone's the same thing, all robots, all nodding and agreeing, all doing, following the same practices. Yeah, I don't think the business can be sustained if everybody is working in negative thing. But I appreciate that you might not always have that support within, and so that's where you can look at external support on that as well. Encourage your staff as well to make sure they're taking care of themselves. You could, for example, have perks for them so they can keep taking care of themselves. So I mentioned obviously about things like health coverage, insurance, but it might be that you give them access to other things that can help them physically fit. You could do just fun things, making sure you get together, that you celebrate little wins as you're developing the product and the business. Make sure that you, maybe just go for a walk. As the team, we sometimes go for a run on a Friday morning to kick off the day. And we're not all avid runners in that sense, but we can kind of make sure that everybody's covered for, and I think it's a good way to kind of kick off the day, and we're all quite happy after that as well. So, I think it's just finding one or two little things you can do. Is it maybe go and play paddle together as a team, build that rapport? Something which doesn't necessarily have to have a big cost to it, I think is key.
Yeah, I think Jamie, you covered what I wanted to touch on as well, especially towards the last end. Celebrating the success is important for yourself as well as for the team. Obviously, as a startup founder, you might not be able to afford the perks for yourself or the team that a large company could afford. I think the team that would work with you will understand it. But as long as they see the runway and when they see where the business is heading, the important thing is to keep that communication clear and keep that communication two-way, so that you tell them and explain to them what we are building and what the potential is, and also hear back from them what ideas they have, what feedback they may have, and some of their concerns as well, so that there's always a two-way uh, communication happening. And at the same time, as Jamie said, always celebrate the small wins, and it doesn't have to be expensive
Yeah.
things that you do, going out for a lunch, going out for a walk. And I remember when in my startup, when we had like just for one employee, two co-founders, myself and a friend, and then one employee, three of us used to go for a lunch on Fridays. And then as we grew to about 20 people, we still used to do that every month. Obviously, we couldn't afford lot of expensive things that large companies do, but as a startup, as a small company, little things, celebrating someone's birthday, celebrating someone giving birth to a child. Those little things do matter, and also employees should start feeling that this founder does care, and then they are connected to you at a very personal level, because it's not like a 50,000 employee company that we are talking about. We are
Yeah.
talking about a one employee company or five employees company, or maybe max 10, 15 employees company, and the founder should know them personally, should know what they're going through, and be able to help them in that situation, not just within work but outside work as well, so that there's that bonding, because it's something that you build together.
Great. Oh, yeah, good question, that one. I think God sparked some interesting answers. Hopefully that also helped answer or gave you some ideas on that as well. I think, yeah, there's no one size fits all in that regard as well. And that's kind of the gist of what we've said today. But hopefully some of these things have given you some food for thought. Hopefully we can inspire you if you have that dream to make that leap. It does take a lot of bravery, and I think always got huge respect for those who do make that leap as well. And if we can help you, hold your hand along that way, then we're here to do that as well. I think we'll wrap up the session now because we're just at the hour. But as I mentioned at the beginning, all of our previous sessions are now on the YouTube channel, which we'll share with you. And then this one, once the video has been processed, we'll also add that on there as well. So you can always come back and check out some of those things as well. Or if you want slides or something like that, let us know. But yeah, we've got some exciting things on the horizon, and please do keep us posted about anything else you think would help you in your journeys as well. So for now, we'll say cheerio and have a nice afternoon, and talk to you all soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.